Hey y'all. I wanted to do a very quick video about something related to the Natalie Cochran trial. If you watched today, I think this was day 7 of the trial, and there was a little bit of a shocker. Previously, Natalie had indicated that she was planning to testify, which is, in my opinion, a very interesting decision. A lot of criminal defendants are advised by their counsel to not testify because it can be testimony can be misconstrued very easily. And so she had previously said she was going to testify, and then at the end of the day today, after the jury was dismissed, the judge announced that she was not going to testify and that the defense was going to rest, which, yeah, definitely was a bit surprising, a surprising end to a day that, for those of you who watched it, was it was very interesting. I think Lawyer Lee is doing a recap, and I'm gonna post this after her recap. But there was a lot of kind of monotonous testimony, although there was some very interesting testimony. But that is not the purpose of this recording. I found this article the other day, and I think I put it on X. If you're not following me on X, I put a lot of stuff on there as well, primarily X and YouTube. While when I have time around working client work, but the I put this on X. I'm pretty sure it was a Los Angeles Times article, relatively recent, actually. I don't know if perhaps this guy, Christopher Goffard, he's doing a series on historic crimes in LA, and he doesn't mention Natalie in this article, but it is about the most notorious insulin murderer of all time, whose name was William Dale Archard. And so I'm not going to read all of this, but I'll share the link to the article in the video. I don't think it's paywalled, but if you have a chance, read it. The reason I'm sharing it is because I think there's this thought that insulin murders are not that common, and I really don't think that they are super common. If I have time, I'm going to see if I can pull some statistics on them. But Tom Truman, the state's attorney, one of the state's attorneys today, made the point, and I'm paraphrasing, but he was cross-examining Dr. Banerjee today, and he said something to the effect of, "Well, this would be a good murder. Insulin would make a good murder weapon, right? Because it's hard to detect. It's a naturally occurring hormone, and this guy, William Dale Archard, killed, as I understand it, at least 6 people and maybe more with insulin. 2 of his, I think, 7 wives and his nephew, um, and then 3 others that I believe he was suspected of killing, but I don't think he was convicted of killing. I think he was ultimately just convicted of killing his 2 wives and his nephew. So I'm gonna just read portions of this. His crime spree went on, I think, from like 47 to 67. He was arrested in 67. And I'm gonna butcher some of the names in here. I'm sure I'm not super familiar with California. But there's a lot of similarities, and I just think it's very interesting because I think you'll probably pick up on some of the similarities. And let me reiterate, Natalie is innocent until proven guilty. Um, eh, and I mean, even if she's convicted, um, that doesn't necessarily mean that she was factually guilty. I know that's a bit controversial, but juries get it wrong. And they get it right, hopefully more than they get it wrong, but they do get it wrong sometimes. So anyway, this guy, William Dale Archard, uh, I think his first murder was in 67. No, sorry, 47. He was arrested in 67. And when he was arrested, apparently he said, "Well, it took you long enough," which one of the common, I mean, the thing that has struck me about this case is just the level of hubris and narcissism. Put the murder aside, but the level of hubris to scam your family and friends and people you don't know, but particularly your family and friends, that's like next level narcissistic in my mind. And this guy was very much a narcissist. Um, the prosecutor called him the greatest cold-blooded killer since Bluebeard, and a judge said he's the most evil defendant he'd ever seen. Uh, so he was a natural salesman at various times, hawking vitamins, hearing aids, and folding doors. The merchandise he sold best was himself. From 1930 to 65, he married 7 women, sometimes not even bothering to divorce the previous one. He learned his special method of murder. Okay, so similarity number one in the healthcare profession, which allowed him to get away with it for so long as a young hospital attendant at Camarillo State Hospital. California people tell me if I'm mispronouncing this. He worked off and on at the quote insulin shock ward from 39 to 41. It was a 20-bed dorm for the treatment of schizophrenia in the desperate era before anti-psych drugs. So I didn't realize that this was a quote therapy. I'm doing air quotes. You probably can't see it, but air quotes of therapy for mental health issues. And it says, as part of the therapy, now discredited, thank God, injections of insulin would plunge a patient into a deep coma as the brain was starved of sugar. A pencil, this is super weird to me because y'all tell me if I'm forgetting this or if I'm misremembering this. I swear, I think it was in Chris Davis's testimony. I believe he testified that someone rubbed the ball of Michael's foot. Maybe it was Mr. Treadway. I didn't know that was a thing, like this rubbing the ball of somebody's foot to see. I think I have heard of it, but it's just interesting to me that this is coming up in this context. And I think Chris Davis testified that Thomas Treadway or someone did this to Michael when he was still at home to see what his reaction was. Maybe this is the common thing and I'm just unaware, but I just thought that was interesting. I'm going to see if I can go back to the test. It really doesn't matter. Why am I dwelling on this? I don't know. A pencil was rubbed along the ball of the patient's foot. If the toes fanned out in a so-called Babinski response, he was reverting back to first man, an ape from which we are supposed to have sprung, as one of Archer's former co-workers would testify. This meant death was close. Glucose brought patients awake, sometimes with brain damage misinterpreted as a psychological improvement. Because insulin is a natural hormone and injections are quickly absorbed, an overdose was nearly impossible to pinpoint as a cause of death. For at least 6 victims across 19 years, police believed it was Archer's choice of poison. His first suspected murder was in 47. So this is like the weirdest story and so sketch AF, pardon my French, but William Jones Jr., this guy that was apparently a friend of Archer's, was charged with raping. Oh crap! I'm gonna have to edit that out. Of basically SA of a babysitter, and so then Archer was like, "Oh hey, I can help you guys out. I'll buy off their family. I'll buy off this babysitter's family. Give me $1,000." So then he took 300 of it, gave it to the family, and then he pocketed the sweet 7 and then other 700. And then he told Jones he would show him how to fake a head injury and avoid court. An insulin injection would mimic the symptoms. Jones convulsed hideously while Archer stood quietly at his bedside. And then the coroner ruled that it was encephalitis. Have we heard that? Yes, we have heard that. Okay, so these are some of his victims. I'll let you go through and look at this. And again, I think he was only convicted for the deaths of 3 of them, not all 6, but they maybe used the suspected deaths to establish a pattern. I need to go actually dig into the case more. Given that the jury is going to get this tomorrow, I wanted to get this to you guys, and hopefully you'll go read it. So then, like 9 years later, he apparently murdered his 4th wife, 48-year-old Zella Winders. And his story was that 2 robbers broke in and injected her in the buttocks. Can you say that on YouTube? I don't know. He refused to take her to the hospital. Hello. And soon after, she was dead with 2 extra puncture marks. So I don't think that in Michael's case, I remember someone asking if there were puncture marks on him. And I don't remember there being testimony about like puncture marks being found. Regardless, the similarities of he refused to let her go to the hospital. I mean, per the testimony, Natalie didn't refuse, but she certainly wasn't, hippity hopping him down to the closest hospital. That baffles me, y'all. Like, I just can't even. My husband can be quite stubborn, and he will admit it. But if he were that sick, I'm not going to just say, oh, well, he's going to be mad at me if I take him to the hospital. No, his ass would go to the hospital. I just don't get that. Anyway, this lady, his wife, 4th wife, Zella, the coroner said it was bronchopneumonia. Then 2 years later, 5th wife, 46-year-old Juanita Plum in Vegas. Hey, baby, let's go to Vegas. Was dead within days with unexplained sweating and convulsions. And the coroner said it was accidental barbiturate overdose. So not only does he murder people with insulin, he also runs scams, y'all. He runs scams. In 1960, he persuaded a 54-year-old acquaintance, Frank Stewart, to participate in an insurance scam. Insulin would counterfeit the symptoms of a head injury, cerebral hemorrhage, the autopsy said. The following year, he pressured his nephew, his 15-year-old nephew, Bernie Kirk Archard, into a similar scheme. They would pretend the boy had been hit by a truck and an insulin injection would mimic the effects: bronchopneumonia and, wait for it, cerebral hemorrhage, the coroner said. So at this point, they were starting to catch on to him. He killed his 7th wife, and I'm not meaning to be like nonchalant or blasé about this. I'm just trying to get through it quickly because, yeah, I know y'all don't, want to hear me talk about this for 40 minutes. Killed his 7th wife, 60-year-old Mary Brinker Post, in 1966, and then a year later is when he gets arrested. So it says she suffered hideous convulsions and died at Pomona Valley Hospital. Hypoglycemic shock due to undetermined, the autopsy said. The sheriff's department put this guy named White. He wrote a book about the case, or an article or a book about the case. He was on it for like a decade. And it says they set out to prove a circumstantial case, which, from jump, the state has said this is circumstantial. But hey, you know what, y'all? Circumstantial cases can result in convictions. He said, I decided Archard's crime spree had gone on long enough. I was going to nail him if it took the rest of my career to do it. So he enlisted doctors, including leading insulin researchers, to re-examine medical files in the 6 known deaths. All the deaths were attributable to insulin overdose. Brain slides, which I think they talked about some specimen slides today. I couldn't tell if they actually were ever made or not. Showed massive damage that could only have been caused by insulin-induced glucose starvation. Archer went on trial for the 3 deaths, wives number 4 and number 7, and his nephew, and the prosecutors used the other 3 to establish his decades-long pattern. I don't know what they mean by that. I'm gonna look into that, but I'm just curious as to, from an evidentiary perspective, how they used the other 3. The star witness was his 3rd wife, a former nurse named, oh, I'm gonna butcher this, y'all. How do you say that? Dorothea Sheehan, who I guess they got married and then he annulled it to wed another woman the next day. Yeah, hell yeah, I'd be pissed too. She was one pissed off ex-wife, White wrote, and she wanted blood. So she like went on the stand and gave all this inculpating testimony that helped in convicting him. And she said that, and I mean, I'm drawing similarities, y'all. I'm just drawing some parallels. That actually, I don't know if it was his wife that said this. As she recounts in her book, Assassins, Serial Killers, and Corrupt Cops. I might have to read that. That actually sounds pretty good. Mary Nicewinder got to know him while covering his trial for Long Beach Press Telegram. He told her stories designed to elicit pity. Cancer. That he dug ditches as a boy and needed 43 operations for malformed limbs. She decided he was a pathological liar. His guards would tell me later, you know, he expected to beat this and was counting on you for his next wife, she wrote. I wasn't flattered. So his trial was a 2-month trial, and they said he was unfailingly relaxed, friendly, and respectful to his attorneys. We haven't really seen Natalie exhibit any inappropriate behavior. I do still think it is super bizarre that she goes up for every sidebar, which I think I was talking to some folks on X and on YouTube, and I think it's maybe a jurisdictional thing. I did not ever have clients do that, and I just have not witnessed that very much, but whatever. It's not improper per se. It's just unusual in my opinion. What was the other thing I wanted to tell you? Oh, he chose to have his case heard by a judge rather than a jury, thinking he was less likely to get the death penalty. But Judge Adolph Alexander found him guilty, making him the first convicted insulin murderer in the United States, and sent him to death row. Let's see. Oh, a sign of his narcissism. So right, but he was on death row and he was about to be executed, and for his last meal he wanted steak and lobster, not just steak or lobster. No, he wanted both, the surf and the turf. And they said, no, you got to pick, buddy, just pick one. And he said, they're going to kill me and they want to argue with me about whether I can have steak and lobster. It isn't fair. It isn't right. I mean, come on, dude. Really? So his death sentence actually got commuted. So he wasn't executed. He died of natural causes in 1977. He was 65 years old and a charming sociopath. I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all because who knows if we'll get a verdict tomorrow, but it seems like it should go to the jury. I think Tom Truman said that there is a rebuttal witness that they were going to call. If I understood him correctly, another one of the officers to refute some of what the kid said. I'll have to go back and listen to that, but there's a good chance we could have a verdict tomorrow. And so I wish I had been able to do more on this case, y'all. It is tax season, and that's my real job until I can do this full time, if that ever happens. No, that I do. I love tax. I do, and especially crypto tax. And this channel so far has been a lot more true crime unrelated to crypto, but I think I'm going to do a series for those of you who are crypto holders or interested in crypto. I'm going to do a story about Ross Ulbricht. I don't know if you know about the whole Free Ross and Silk Road and all of that, but he was released. President Trump released him last week. And so I think I may do a story about that. Anyway, I think Natalie's guilty. That is my opinion. I have various, probably biased reasons for thinking that, but I don't know that I think that the state proved it beyond a reasonable doubt, if I'm being perfectly candid. I think today helped them. I think also Officer Bledsoe's testimony helped them, and who was the other witness? Was it Dr. Uribe? Those last two witnesses for the state, I think, were pretty solid. And then inadvertently, some of the testimony today helped. I think Lawyer Lee is going through some of, well, obviously she's recapping, but so go listen to her for that, because she does a great job of doing recap. But I do think today's testimony inadvertently hurt Natalie. So it'll be interesting to see if we get a verdict tomorrow. I do think she did it, quite honestly. I just can't get past not taking him to the hospital. I do think she had a motive. I think he knew to some degree, but the text, the timing, and this is probably unfair, but it also, when you think about jurors, they're still colored by their life experience, their perceptions, their family, their relationships, and we're all no different. And so my opinion of this case and of her is colored by my own personal experience with someone very much like her. And I just think she did it, and I think she had motive, and I think she had motive, opportunity, and I do think she probably was charming and thought she could get away with it and no one would suspect her, just like with the Ponzi scheme. So I just wanted to get that out there that if we do get a verdict tomorrow and they find her guilty, I was right. I'm just kidding. And I guess that's it. I gotta learn how to wrap these videos up. This is annoying, just rambling on. Okay, bye. Oh, wait, am I still recording? You saw me drink my cider? Okay, bye for reals.